Hello everyone, I'm Jim Longworth and welcome to a special voter education edition of Triad Today. On October 10th, a number of towns and cities in our area will be holding a primary election. And since we can't possibly profile all of those candidates who are running, we're going to focus on just a few of the competitive races in the city of High Point. But first, I want to thank Brian Gavigan and all the good folks at the High Point Political Alliance. That's a nonpartisan organization who's helping to sponsor this voter education special. Now, after this message, we'll meet the candidates. Back now on this special voter education edition of Triad Today, and in this particular segment, you're going to meet a couple of candidates who are running for council in Ward 4 of High Point. I say a couple. We had a third who was supposed to be here, was not able to join us. So we'll enjoy the company of these two gentlemen and get their views on a few things. And let's introduce them to you right now. On my immediate right, Jim Bronard is a retired business owner, very active in the community. And next to him, Wesley Hudson, who's director of music, and he's an organist at First United Methodist Church. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Let me just go in alphabetical order here. Jim, I'm going to start with you. And just take a minute or so and tell me a little something about yourself.
Well, I'm a transplant from Cincinnati, Ohio. I've lived here for 11 years. For the last 10 years, I've been quite involved with the city of High Point and enjoy working with the public. I always have, and this is where I've made my home, and this is where I intend to stay.
And it's important for people to get involved, don't you think? I mean,
yes.
We can sit back and complain, but it's like, what was it after I don't want to get into a lot of politics stuff, but after the Trump and Hillary election, there were a bunch of millennials out in Portland that protested. You remember that the night afterwards? And they took a survey. They were angry that Hillary didn't win. They took a survey, and 70% of them hadn't voted. So, I mean, that's sort of, it's like an epidemic of that sometimes, and it's important to get involved. Anyway, I digress because I run off at the mouth sometimes. All right, Wesley, now I'm going to give you the full time. Tell something about yourself.
Okay. My name's Wesley Hudson. I own a construction company, Hudson Remodeling and Restoration.
As well as being an organist.
As well as serving as director of music and organist at First Methodist Church in town.
Okay. Now, where were you born?
I was born in Radford, Virginia.
In Radford, Virginia,
Yeah.
okay.
Moved to Winston-Salem to come to the School of the Arts.
Right, it's a great place.
Thank you.
So we have two transplants, one from Radford, one who's, I'm guessing, a Johnny Bench fan. So
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We had Johnny on the show not long ago. We did. All right, guys, let's get serious and talk about some things that you believe, maybe a top issue that you think is important facing High Point, a problem or an issue facing High Point, and what you would do about it to try to fix the problem or address the challenge if you're on council. Jim, go ahead.
Some of these commissions that I serve on for the city, I see things firsthand, and there's a need for jobs and decent paying jobs. And the job problem and the lack of jobs creates many, many more problems like the food insecurity and the crime and all different types of things. And we need also good job skill training. You know, the quality of your training equals what you get paid. So that's one of the biggest things I see.
And attracts bigger, better industries and higher paying people that are going to pay higher wages in those industries to come here if they know we've got a workforce that knows what's going on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think our community colleges are doing a good job of that as we get the word out that those are available. Wesley, let me go to you. Same question.
Certainly the top item on our agenda is the revitalization of the downtown area. By revitalizing that downtown area and bringing jobs into town, it promotes economic growth. And that growth, in turn, increases revenue for the city by increasing the values of the properties around, by increasing revenue through tax revenue. One
of the things we've been talking about, and I want to talk with the other candidates as we move through the show about specifically, is what I'm calling, it's not a baseball stadium, it's a multi-use stadium, but it's a project where if that goes through, Nito Kubain and High Point University has helped to raise some $50 million to do other developments around there. So it's sort of it's not only a multi-use stadium, but a multi-use impact area too, if it goes. But of course, there was some problems with the Guilford County Commissioners maybe not wanting to be responsible for backing up a bond if that's the case. And now, of course, High Point City Council says, well, maybe we'll go on our own. Guys, let me just get your feelings about this whole multi-use stadium project and the development that could go around it. Good idea, bad idea?
Oh, I think it's a fantastic idea. In my hometown of Cincinnati, that is actually one of the models for revitalization. And what they've done there, the formula is very similar. What they've done there is absolute miracle. And here in High Point, they've got the right people in place to do this, I feel. And I just think this is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, and so you think we can get it done?
Yes.
Wesley, same thing. Your thoughts?
Absolutely on board. I think it's the best thing that High Point could be doing right now, and I hope that the commissioners come around. I don't want to write them off the table. There is still time. I understand their hesitancy, but I do hope that they can come back around, and they say they very well might.
Something that I know that, running a company, and of course both of you had experience in business. There are people who say that High Point, like many cities, needs to do a better job of being responsive to the needs of business. And again, I'm not picking on High Point because every city has problems with this. How do you make that better? How do you make those relationships better, Jim?
Well, I know the permitting and licensing is still an issue, but it's gotten better. But the education here too, a lot of company owners don't want to come here because the school systems aren't the best. So there's a lot of problems that needs to be worked on. The cost of living too is a deterrent, I believe, too.
Okay. Wes, what do you think?
Well, one of the wonderful things about the downtown revitalization is that you do get a core of employees down there thanks to having new apartments. We have a 200-unit apartment complex. Those people will work somewhere. When we lost a lot of our manufacturing jobs, we kind of created a hole in the job market. We have entry-level positions and we do have professional-level positions, but it's very difficult to come into a company and 5 years later move up the ladder to a better paying job, and then 5 years later move up to management. So it's those mid-level jobs I think we're going to create with the downtown revitalization.
Well, I appreciate both of you taking time to drop by the studio today in advance of the big candidates forum that we'll be talking about that's coming up Tuesday, because I know you'll be there too, and I'll be moderating that. We can go in more in depth about some of these issues, but I thought it'd be a good idea just to let the folks just see you for a couple minutes anyway in advance of that. But thanks a lot for what you do. Thanks for being active in the community too.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
We'll be right back after today, and we're bringing you this voter education special, and I'm so glad you could join us for us. Now, in this particular segment, we're going to focus on candidates who are running in Ward 5 in the city of High Point. I want you to meet them right now. On my immediate right, Vic Jones is the owner of Royal Limousine of Greensboro, among other things. All these gentlemen wear lots of hats. Next to him is Derek Stubbs. Derek is Associate Minister of Temple Memorial Baptist Church. And then we have Chris Whitley, who is Vice President of Purchasing for Regan International. And gentlemen, thanks again for being here and taking your time to let everybody know a little something about yourself.
Thank you.
And of course, I'll plug this at the end of the show, but we're all going to be together. I'll be moderating, and we'll have some more time at the High Point Chamber Forum coming up on Tuesday, but this will be sort of a get-to-know-you segment here. Let me first just go down the line and ask each of you to give just a little bit of information about who you are and what you do. So we'll start with you, Vic.
I said Vic Jones. I served for 13 years in the United States Marine, deployed to Iraq and South Korea. Finished up, got my degree in finance at UNCG. Now in Royal Limousine, I own a trucking company and an insurance agency with a little over 200 agents across the nation.
And you employ a lot of former military guys at the limousine company, right?
Absolutely. We actually got an award, the Freedom Award from the Secretary of Defense for employing veterans.
That's right. Oh, that's very good. Now, Derek, tell us something about yourself.
Well, I'm Derek Stubbs. I'm from High Point originally, retired military. I'm actually also serve as Associate Minister at Temple Memorial Baptist Church, very involved in the actual community. I kind of get out and volunteer with a lot of local groups in that area, kind of keep myself involved in the things that are going on in the area.
That's great, and it's always good to be involved in churches, no matter what your faith is. I think that it's really good experience for running for office, whether you win or not, and I just applaud you for your community service and your service in the military.
Thank you.
And Chris, we've introduced you already, but tell us a little something about yourself.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for the opportunity today. I'm born in High Point, pretty much grew up in North High Point in Ward 5 area. Got married, 2 kids, been doing great. We
And I think it's important that I just want to say on your behalf, not that I'm favoring one candidate over another, but I like it when somebody is homegrown, you're a homegrown boy, and you say, okay, I'm going to stay here and try to make something of myself and make something of the city. And I think we need more of that. I think we need to keep more young people coming here. I think you would all agree with that, right? Keep them in and keep them involved. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
that's fine.
Let me move on here.
All right.
All right. First question, guys. I just want to ask each of you, we'll go down the line on this and start with Vic. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing the city of High Point, Vic?
Well, outside of the recent spike in crime, we've got a big portion of our tax base that moves away. I'm one of the anomalies, a young professional that stayed here.
Right.
A lot of the young professionals are moving to Charlotte or Raleigh, where there's more of quality of life for people in that age bracket. And I think High Point's working hard right now to work on some things that would change that and make it more fun and a better fulfilling life for people like myself to live there.
Right. Before I go to Derek, let me just ask you, what kind of ways would you fix some of the problems in High Point? Sort of coming at the question a little bit different.
Well, economic development is the main thing we've got to have. We've got to have jobs that pay decent wages. Some of the projects that we're working on downtown now will accomplish that. And when we have more income, we have less scarcity of food. When we have more income, we have less crime. Everything is tied to the economic sector. And my experience with owning 3 companies, I think, will be very valuable to City Council in doing that.
Absolutely. Derek, same question. What do you think is a big issue facing High Point, and how would you solve it as a council person?
Well, economic development is really the key thing there. A lot of the issues that High Point is facing all stem around the actual ability to have employment. And so when we see the actual high rate, the increase in violence and the high crime rates, and we see the actual heroin epidemic playing itself out within the city, all that kind of stems back into the employment piece of things. So we can continue to have projects like the Catalyst projects to come into High Point and to help bring in other businesses to help stimulate our economy. That is the thing I see that can help us kind of turn things around. It's one of the other things is we're trying to retain some of the millennials in that area. We are doing a lot of growth in Ward 5. We have a lot of new growth and a lot of new developments out there, but trying to retain people and make the area more appealing to that particular group.
That's like I was saying. Yeah, it's like I was saying to Chris earlier. And we, we weren't kidding about this. It's important to keep the young people here. And although the 4 of us are not young people now, but that Chris decided to stay here, and you stay here, and you stay here. And I think that's great. Chris, same question. What's the big issue facing High Point, for example, and as a council person, what would you do to try to work on it?
Well, the first thing you've got the infrastructure, who has been neglected very seriously in the city of High Point. My 19 years, our goal was always to increase the budget for the resurfacing, the sidewalks. That has deteriorated the sidewalks in the streets have deteriorated tremendously. The budget numbers have dropped tremendously as well, and by the city council. I think that's got to be brought back up. The tax rate and the fees have just gone through the roof the past few years. My last 3 years as finance chairman of the city of High Point, through my 19 years, we literally held the tax rate to 0 for 3 years in a row. So it can be done, and something's got to be done with it. As far as the catalyst, that's an economic development. We'll see how it plays out. I think the experience is going to be needed down there to make sure if it's done, you have the ability to manage the property down there and done correctly.
We didn't rehearse any of this, but since we got a little time left, let's talk about the baseball stadium project and the development that would be around that. As we know, Nito Cobain, the president of High Point University, raised $50-some million for development around that if it goes. And yet there were some commissioners at Guilford who said, well, what if it fails? What will we do then? But I don't think that's a good attitude to take, Vic.
Well, it's a lack of faith for one, but just to change one quick thing, it's not a baseball stadium, it's a multi-purpose stadium.
It's a multi-purpose stadium, right.
So it's just going to affect everyone. We've got a minor league soccer team that's looking at us. That's going to affect not just High Point residents, but that's huge with our international people that live even 30, 45 minutes away that'll drive all the way to High Point to come see a professional soccer league. We're going to have concerts. We're going to have the baseball games as well, but I mean, there's so much more that comes from just this catalyst. It lights the fire. That's all it's doing.
And you're for this development too, right, Darren?
I am. And part of my actual campaign slogan is called VIBE, Vision Inspired by Bold Expectation. Sometime in order to walk out on faith, you got to have some bold expectations. And this project is one of those things. It brings in a lot of components that we can actually build upon. We look at all the services that will be generated from this particular entity. It'll bring in so many jobs for the actual local community that, true, It's a risk, but what in life is not a risk? You got to
Right.
take some risks if you want
Right.
to see some progress.
Yeah, it was risky for me just to have you three on here. I didn't know what you were going to say. Chris, bring up the rear on this while we still have a minute
I think
left.
the stadium, I've seen the plans, it's a tremendous plan. I love the fact that the private sector has jumped in on this particular project at the dollar amount they have. I think if the city of High Point had gone to bond referendum, the county wouldn't be an issue right now. So there may be a problem in the future, in 60 to 90 days, there's no telling what they're waiting on. Let's hope let's hope that the plan B that council is currently working on gets through.
Yeah, I just think it's a great project. And to Vic and Derek and Chris, really, again, seriously, thanks for taking time to be here and just to give folks a little bit, just whet their appetite a little bit about what you stand for and who you are. And again, I hope everybody will come out to the big forum on Tuesday so we can have more time to discuss some of the issues. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after this. On this special edition of Triad Today, it's a voter education special where we're going to meet candidates who are running for office in the city of High Point. And in this particular segment, we're going to meet three gentlemen who want to be the mayor of High Point. All of them have political experience, civic experience. They're all great guys. We're going to meet them right now. So I'll go down the line. On my immediate right, Bruce Davis is a businessman and a Marine Corps vet. Next to him, Jim Davis. Jim is a general contractor and currently council member for Ward 5, which he would give up that seat if he's elected mayor, and there'll be other people running for Ward 5. Next to him, Jay Wagner is a partner in Fisher Wagner, and I assume that's a law firm, right?
Yes.
Good. And currently council member for Ward 4. Gentlemen, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Let's go down the line and just take about a minute each and tell something about yourselves, so the audience will get familiar with us. Go ahead, Bruce.
Sure. Jim, thank you, first of all, for allowing us to be here. Of course, I am a businessman in High Point. I have had a business for the past 20 years. I'm a 20-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps as well. I've served on the Board of Commissioners for 12 years, the chairman of the Board of Commissioners back in 2005.
That's back when Guilford realized that High Point was in Guilford.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had to bring it to their attention. We're still
All right.
struggling with
Yeah,
that a little
all right,
bit.
go ahead.
Yeah, but I've always enjoyed serving my community, and I want to continue to do so, which is why I'm running for mayor of High Point.
All right. Jim, same thing.
Jim, I'm a lifelong resident of High Point. I live in the north end of town on land that's been in my family since 1804. I've raised my family, been married 31 years, been in business for myself I think this is my 36th year this year.
Yeah.
I've always had community service and public service in my blood. Started years ago in the JCs and continued to the day, so I'm running for mayor.
Well, I appreciate those thoughts. And as we talked about with some other panels today, and I'm sure we'll come up at the forum on Tuesday, it's important that we have some homegrown boys and girls to stay with us and grow up and be adults and business people and leaders. And I applaud that and what you guys are doing. Now let's move to Jay, and the same thing, Jay.
Yeah, like Jim, I'm a lifelong High Pointer. Both my wife and I grew up here in town, and I was lucky enough after attending law school to be able to come back to High Point. I've been practicing law in town for about 20 years. I have a deep love for my city. I want to make it better. I feel a real duty to do that.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky enough to serve on council for the last 5 years, and currently serving as a mayor pro tem. And I feel that we're on the cusp of great things, and we need to have the leadership in place to make sure those things
A lot
happen.
of things going on. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to go back down the line, starting with Bruce, and ask you the same question, which is, tell me one of the big challenges you think that the city of High Point's facing, and if you're on council, what would you do to try to fix those challenges or meet those challenges?
Very, very good, Jim. Well, one of the biggest things I think in High Point is to get that catalyst project going. Of course, we have some other issues to deal with, the spike in violent crimes and so on and so forth, which I am working on that as well. But as far as the city, if we can get this catalyst project off the ground, it's going to bring lots of jobs. It's going to create a great meeting place for our citizens. We've been talking about it for a very long time. How do we energize High Point? How do we take care of those valleys when the furniture market is not around? How do we keep activity going? So
Yeah.
I think once we get that going, it's going to add a lot to High Point.
Jim?
1 in 6 people have some kind of form of hunger issue. And I believe that hunger, violent crime, opioid addiction, all correlated. And mayors across this country have formed task force to look at these issues. And if I'm elected mayor, I'd like to do the same thing. I think that if you look in areas of our city that have been neglected for years, the dilapidated housing, the lack of jobs and transportation and good health care, I think it all comes back to the same correlated problem. So I think that that's one of our biggest challenges this year.
And it's everywhere. You're talking about this hunger issue. We've had the mayor and other officials on from Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, and people don't believe us when we say, you got all these great things going on with the arts and everything, and yet hunger is it's one of the worst areas for hunger and childhood hunger and stuff. So it is a problem all the way around. Jay, what do you think?
I would agree with the other candidates as to what our challenges are. Hunger and lack of jobs, and all of those things are going to require the city to come up with some money to help pay for them. And being able to do that with a declining tax base, which we've experienced, it's been either declining or flat really for decades. So how are we going to pay for the services? How are we going to pay for addressing these needs? And that brings us back to that Catalyst project. High Point really needs a shot in the arm. We need to invest in areas that need the help so that we can lower taxes for everybody all over the city. We're all in the same boat. So right now we have a situation where I think we're all pulling together to address those needs.
What about the baseball stadium, multi-use stadium project? And it looks like it may be on track. We'll keep our fingers crossed. But what's your view of it?
Well, as far as the project itself, we've got some challenges that we have to overcome with the county commissioners. And of course, the city council, the current council right now have come up, I guess, with Plan B on how to address
Trying to go it alone.
Absolutely, and I seriously believe that we don't want to go it alone. If I had my druthers, I would certainly want to include the county commissioners, because at some point we're going to need our county commissioners.
Yeah.
We need to build that long-term relationship. And I see how we can do that. I know it's a challenge. I know we did not get the answer that we wanted.
Yeah.
But I see a pathway to victory.
Maybe a
with that.
delayed answer. We'll see
delayed
what happens
answer,
with that.
absolutely.
So we go to Jim, you and Jay will have maybe a little bit different perspective, although Bruce has been on the other side of it as a commissioner, but you guys sitting on council, what's going on with the stadium and what do you think about it?
Well, I certainly think that everybody supports the Catalyst project downtown. We all understand we want to revitalize our downtown. The controversy's been over the financing plan. And as chair of the Finance Committee in the City of High Point, I certainly have my share of questions. And I have asked for months, do we have an alternative plan if the county commissioners are not on board, because they're such a large piece of the financing plan.
Right.
And we saw last week that that's not the case. They put a delay to that. So we're looking at an alternative financing plan. So I'm excited to see what the manager will come back and bring to us.
But Jay, there's different formulas for trying to pay this back, as far as loans or bonds or whatever. I mean, we shouldn't get too down in the dumps about this whole thing happening, because if it doesn't happen, then of course what Nito did and raising money for development, that's not going to happen either. It's sort of a domino thing. So where do you stand at this point?
My belief is that this project is going to be transformative for High Point. It is far too important not to do it. We have made commitments, and we have been working with people, developers, or have expressed their interest. There have been donors that have donated a large amount of money. My hope is certainly that the county commissioners will kind of see the light and be willing to get on board with us.
Yeah.
But I think in the long run, this is too important for High Point for us not to do it and not to find a way to do it.
Well, guys, I thank you for dropping by. And again, as we remind people to attend the High Point Chamber Forum on this coming Tuesday night at 6, because we'll hear more from these gentlemen. And also, I'm very proud to have them for another reason, because you watch some of these cable talk shows and things where people are yelling at each other. Did you hear anybody yelling at each other here? No. These are gentlemen who know how to get things done and do it politely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after this. Well, that's it for this special voter education edition of Triad Today, brought to you in part by the High Point Political Alliance. I also invite you to attend the High Point Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum. That's this Tuesday night at 6 p.m. at the High Point University Community Center in Oak Hollow Mall, where you'll be able to hear from all of the candidates. For all of us here at Triad Today, I'm Jim Longworth. We'll see you next week when the Roundtable returns to give us their predictions on the upcoming primary.